So in today's video, I just wanted to read a couple of really short stories from this book. It's called My Biggest Bedtime Book Ever. Something that my kids used to enjoy when they were a bit younger, and I thought I'd just read a couple of quick stories. The Little Car. The little car sat all alone at the back of the yard. All the bright, shiny cars around him had been sold, and now he was the only one left. Some of his parts had stopped working properly, and he was very sad. One evening, just before the yard was closed, a pretty lady with dark hair came up to him. He tried to look as smart as he could as he opened and closed his doors. "I know he's old, and he's all I can afford," she said. She coughed and spluttered as she sat inside and tried to start his engine, and at last he wobbled out of the yard to her home. The next morning, the dark-haired lady cleaned him. She used a shampoo and washed him all over. When she had finished, she smiled and said, "That's a magic shampoo. You'll soon feel so much better." The little car looked at himself in the mirrors, and all his paintwork had begun to shine brightly. His chrome was like new, and his aches and pains were gone. Even his engine felt new. When he next went out for a drive, he felt so good, he revved his little engine and purred along happily for miles. He really did feel like a brand new car. The next quick story is called Dreams of Flying. Susanna was suddenly woken up by a light shining at the end of her bed. A tiny gleaming figure, a fairy, was sitting there. "I can grant you one wish," said the fairy. "What would you like?" "I'd like to be able to fly as you do," answered Susanna. "Very well, I'll put a spell on you so that you can fly. But part of the spell will make you forget all about me when you wake up in the morning. You will think that you only dreamed about flying," the fairy told her. To start with, Susanna had to stand on the edge of her bed. As a fairy waved her wand over Susanna, she told her to jump off. Susanna didn't grow wings, and she didn't have to flap her arms, but she knew she was able to fly. Susanna drifted gracefully off the edge of the bed and out through the window. She and the fairy flew over the rooftops of the town, but all too soon it was time to go back. The next day, Susanna remembered flying, but just as the fairy had thought, she thought it had been a dream. Have you ever had a dream like this? Perhaps a fairy has visited you. It's quite a nice little story there. The next one is called Smarty. So I do apologise for some of the noise in the background. You might hear tractors, and there are some children's voices, which is really nice to hear. It's always nice when kids are playing. I'm sat here in the depth of Wales at the moment with my family. It's such a lovely sunny day that I just thought I'd read a couple of quick stories. Anyway, this one's called Smarty. Judy's pet was a fluffy black and white rabbit called Smarty. He was called Smarty because he was such a clever rabbit. In the summer, if Judy's mother could stay to watch, Smarty was allowed out of his hutch for a run in the garden. Smarty loved this. He would scamper along behind the flower beds and then leap into the air, almost as high as Judy's head. He could easily jump over the tallest flowers. One sunny afternoon, Judy asked Mummy if she would come and watch Smarty so that he could run in the garden. "I'll come to watch him in a little while," Mummy said. "I must finish painting this cupboard first." Judy didn't like having to wait. She went into the garden, mumbling to herself, "I don't know why Mummy's got to be here. I'm old enough to look after Smarty without her." Judy looked into Smarty's hutch. "Yes, I think you can come out now, Smarty. I can look after you, so I don't think I shall wait for Mummy." Naughtily, Judy opened the door of the hutch. Smarty sprang out and made one of his splendid hops over the flower bed. Judy was so happy watching him that she didn't notice the big tabby cat that lived next door. She was hiding behind the garden shed, waiting to pounce on Smarty when he hopped near. Suddenly, the cat jumped out. "Oh, Smarty!" shrieked Judy. Smarty saw the cat just in time and began to hop quickly across the garden. The cat chased him, and Judy was really frightened. Smarty was too. The cat chased him around the garden, but then Smarty had an idea, which showed that he really was a very clever rabbit. He rushed into the house and hid in the cupboard under the stairs. The tabby cat could not find him there, so she went out to look in the garden. When Mummy heard Judy shouting, she quickly came to the rescue and frightened the cat out of the house. Smarty then came out of his hiding place, and Judy was very pleased to see him. When she saw how upset Judy was, Mummy didn't scold her for letting Smarty out. Judy cried as she cuddled Smarty once more. "Mummy, I'll never let Smarty out again without you. I promise." That's a nice one. What should we do? So, let's do this one. So this is called Age of the Train. Things have certainly changed. The old steam locomotive whistled softly to itself as it rested on rusty rails. For years, the ancient engine had sat there, ordered off the tracks by wise officials in the big city. Oil and petrol are cheap, they said long ago. Coal is hard to dig. It's expensive. From now on, everyone and everything should go by car, lorry and bus. It's no longer the age of the train. And so for years, the old engine sat there sadly and watched as 20 metres away, on the great road nearby, cars, lorries and buses sped in by the thousands. But today, things were different. Now, petrol and oil were expensive, coal was cheaper, and there were very few cars, lorries and buses on the big road nearby. Yes, things have certainly changed. The locomotive chuckled quietly to itself as a thin plume of smoke rose from its chimney. And I just think I'll do something about it. The engine looked around at the disused goods wagons and passenger carriages behind. Then carefully, gently, its big driving wheels turned over and over, it backed up. In a few minutes there was a long string of carriages hitched to the locomotives. Thoughts of running again over shiny rails went through its mind. Memories of steaming past station after station came back. Then the locomotive looked down at the track ahead. The rails ended a short space behind. It looked down at the track behind. The rails vanished behind the last carriage. Then the old engine remembered. Almost all the rails were torn up. Almost all the stations were closed now. A lone lorry ran down the road. A lone car went its way up. The engine looked at the almost deserted road. Whee! It whistled loudly. Who needs rails anymore? Great puffs of smoke shot out of its chimney. And so nowadays, keep your ears sharp, keep your eyes open. Is that a train whistling in the distance? It most certainly is. Is that a train coming into view? It most certainly is. And is that your road, your very own road it's riding on, a road that used to hold thousands of cars, lorries and buses? Why, it most certainly is. For this, we most proudly admit, is the age of the train once again. A great story. Let's go with this one. So this is called The Black Chick. Stephen was walking along the lane and stopped in surprise. There, running before him and crying, was a little black chick. Stephen couldn't believe his eyes. A black chick? Isn't it unusual? Stephen thought, feeling excited. I will take care of it myself. So he gently carried it home. He found a box to keep it warm and put the chick inside. Wouldn't it be lovely when it grew into a big black hen and laid all them eggs for tea? What a nice pet it would be. But the chick wasn't happy in its box. It kept making such a shrill, high noise, on and on. Mummy came into the garden. "Whatever is that noise, Stephen?" she asked. "I found a chick," he told her, "and it will lay us eggs when it's fully grown." "A chick?" said Mummy. It must have escaped from somewhere. "Let me have a look." Stephen took off the lid, and Mummy started. "Why, Stephen," she cried, "this isn't an ordinary chick." "I know," said Stephen proudly. "It's black." "No, dear," she said, "I didn't mean that." She put the lid back. "I'm afraid you will have to take this chick back." "Come on," said Mummy. "We must take her across this field to the river." Stephen was mystified. "To the river?" he explained. "Why?" Mummy laughed. "You'll see." They reached the riverbank and put the box down. "Leave it there," said Mummy, "and hide quietly behind the bush." Stephen was quite puzzled. From the box came the shrill noise of the chick as they waited and watched. There came a loud squawk from the river. Stephen looked and saw a small black water bird with white tips on its wings and white under its tail. It had a dash of red bright over its beak. Stephen had seen them on the river many times. "Now I see," he cried. "I had a chick of a water hen." "Yes," said Mummy. It's something called a moorhen too, but now you know why he couldn't keep it. This chick needs the river. She stepped out and tipped open the box so that the chick could get out. Then they watched it run to the river, plop into the water, and swim towards its mother. What a great story. I think I'm going to leave it there now. So just want to thank you for joining me. I'm going to go and enjoy the rest of the sunshine, because here in sunny Wales it's absolutely fantastic. Have a great day.